I have taught senior English for 19 years, and in all that time, I have changed exactly 0 grades under pressure. I mention that number up front because a woman named Brenda Coyle spent 8 weeks of one spring absolutely certain she would be the first person alive to make me. She was not. But I will give her this much. She tried harder than anyone before or since. My name is Diane, and I teach at a public high school in a comfortable suburb in Ohio. The kind of district with a nice stadium, a booster club that runs on strong opinions, and parents who have read one article about their rights and none about their responsibilities. I am not a soft touch, and I am not a hard one. I am a measurer. That is the whole job when you strip the poetry off it. A grade is not a gift I hand out because I like you, and it is not a punishment I withhold because I don't. It is a measurement of what you did. If you don't like the number, the beautiful thing about my class is that the number is entirely in your hands. Do the work, the number goes up. That is the deal, and it is the same deal for the quarterback and the kid who sleeps in the back and everyone in between. The essay that started all of it was on a play called The Crucible, which, if you don't know it, is about a town that decides the truth is whatever the loudest, angriest people in the room insist it is, and about one man who will not sign his name to a lie, even when signing would save his life. I have taught that play for 19 years. I did not yet appreciate that spring how much of it I was about to live. The student was a senior named Cody Coyle. Cody was not a bad kid. I want to say that clearly because this is not a story about a monster teenager, and if you came for one, you'll be disappointed. Cody was a coasting kid, a charming, athletic, well-liked boy who had figured out around the 7th grade that a smile and a good last name got him most of the way to most places, and who had never once, in my class, been asked to find out what the rest of the way felt like. He turned in an essay on the Crucible 8 weeks before graduation, and it was, I knew within 2 paragraphs, not his. Let me tell you how a teacher knows. It is not a hunch, and it is not a vendetta, whatever Brenda would later tell 40 other parents. 19 years in, I have read roughly 9,000 student essays, and I know Cody's voice the way you know the footstep of someone you live with. Cody wrote in short, breezy, comma-spliced bursts. This essay moved in long, balanced, elegant sentences, used the word juxtaposition correctly, and quoted the play with the confidence of someone who had actually read it, which Cody, bless him, had not. It was a good essay. It was a college sophomore essay. It had simply never been within a country mile of Cody Coyle. But I don't grade on a feeling, and here is where the difference between me and the version of me that Brenda invented becomes important. I didn't march to the office with a hunch. I did what I always do. I went to the file. Every essay in my class is submitted through the district's online platform, which does 2 quiet, unglamorous things. It stamps the exact date and time of submission, and it runs every paper against a database of other papers and published sources, and returns a similarity report. Cody's report came back lit up like a Christmas tree. Long passages matched, nearly word for word, an essay that had been submitted 3 class periods earlier that same day by another one of my seniors, a hard-working, anxious girl named Jordan, who actually loved the play. So now I had 2 papers that were, in large stretches, the same paper, and a timeline that said Jordan's came first. That is not proof of who did what, only that something was wrong. What turned it from a suspicion into a certainty was something I did not go looking for, and almost wish I hadn't found, because it made me sad more than it made me angry. Our platform lets students message each other about assignments, and those messages, like everything else, live on the school's system, where teachers and administrators can see them when there's a reason to look. There was a reason to look. And there, in black and white, time-stamped the night before, was Cody messaging Jordan. "Just send me yours. I'll change it up so it's not obvious." And Jordan, to her enormous credit and my enormous relief, had written back, "No, that's cheating. Do your own." And then, it turned out, he'd simply gone into a shared class folder she'd forgotten was open and taken it anyway. I followed the policy. I want to be very boring about this, because the boring part is the part that saved me later. Our student handbook, the one every family signs at the start of the year, has a clear academic integrity policy. Plagiarism on a major assignment earns a 0 on that assignment, a referral, and a parent notification. And the student may not simply redo it for full credit. Because the point of the consequence is that the consequence is real. So I gave Cody a 0 on the essay. I filed the referral. I emailed home, calmly and factually, attaching nothing that would humiliate anyone, just the policy and the facts. I have sent that email dozens of times over the years. Most parents, whatever their first reaction, come around, because in their hearts, they know. I assumed Brenda Coyle would be one of them. Brenda Coyle was not one of them. Brenda was the president of the Booster Club, a woman who knew the principal's first name and the superintendent's cell number, and had never, in the memory of anyone I spoke to, been told no by an adult employed by the district. She did not call me to understand. She called me to give instructions. The grade would be changed. Cody had a scholarship offer riding on his final grade point average. A future. A whole life. And I was not going to be the small, bitter woman who ruined it over what she called, and I am quoting her, a technicality with an essay. When I explained, evenly, that copying another student's work was not a technicality, she told me I clearly had something against her son, and hung up. Then she got creative. Within a day, there was a group text. I did not see it live, but I saw it soon enough, because 3 different parents in that chat quietly forwarded it to me, and one of them added, "For the record, we don't agree with her. Keep the grade." Brenda had messaged something like 40 booster and senior class parents to inform them that a vindictive, burned-out English teacher was, quote, torpedoing a good kid's future 8 weeks before graduation, and to ask them to, quote, flood the principal's inbox. She named me. She called me unprofessional and bitter and, my personal favorite, a woman who probably resents kids with bright futures. That last one I actually laughed at, alone in my kitchen. Because bright futures are the entire reason I've stayed in a job that pays what this one pays for 19 years. I did not respond to the group text. I did not fire off a defense. I did not call the parents who'd sided with me and organize a counter chat. I did not do a single one of the loud things every cell in my body wanted to do. Instead, I did the quiet thing. The thing I have done my whole career. The thing my own father, a machinist who documented every part he ever cut, would have done. I opened a folder, a real manila one, and I started printing. The similarity report. The 2 time-stamped submissions. Cody's message asking Jordan to send him hers. Jordan's refusal. The academic integrity policy from the handbook with the relevant line highlighted. And every screenshot of that group text that landed in my inbox, each one showing the date, the sender, and the words. I dated everything. I made 2 copies. I put one folder in my classroom and one in my car, because I had a feeling this was going somewhere with a long table and a microphone. And I was going to walk into that room with the truth in my hands and let it be heavy. I was right about where it was going, but first it went through the principal's office, and that was the part that nearly broke me, because that was the part where the pressure came from someone who was supposed to be on my side. The principal was a mild, tired man named Hale, who was 2 years from his own pension and wanted, above all things on this earth, for his final years, to be quiet. He called me in, closed the door, and did not once say the word cheating. He talked about optics. He talked about what a fight would do to the school this close to graduation. He said, and I remember the exact phrase because I have thought about it many times since, "Let's just make this one go away." He suggested I allow Cody to rewrite the essay for a passing grade, quietly, no referral, and we could all move on. When I said the policy didn't allow that, and that I wasn't comfortable pretending it did, his voice cooled, and he reminded me, gently, that my own contract came up for renewal, and that being seen as a team player never hurt anyone. He smiled when he said it. That was somehow the worst part. He smiled. I want to be honest with you about the next few days, because if I pretend I was made of steel the whole time, the rest of this doesn't mean anything. I nearly folded. I sat at my kitchen table with the folder in front of me, and I did the math a coward does, which is the math of my own comfort. I was 51 years old. I had a pension I did not want to poke, a mortgage, a summer I've been looking forward to. Changing one grade for one coasting kid would make all of this vanish overnight. And part of me whispered that the world would not end, that Cody would go off to college, and that would be that. And who was I to stand in the road of a boy's whole future over an essay? What stopped me was not pride. It was 2 faces. The first was Jordan's, the girl who had actually read the play, who had actually written the essay, who had said no when a popular boy asked her to help him cheat, and who would learn, if I folded, that saying no is for suckers, and that the rules bend for the loud and the well-connected, and never for the quiet and the honest. If I changed that grade, I wasn't just rewarding Cody. I was reaching into Jordan's education and teaching her the single most corrosive lesson a school can teach a good kid, which is that it doesn't pay to be good. I could not do it. I sat there and I thought about her face, and I could not do it. The second face, and I did not expect this one, was Cody's. Because I had been teaching that boy for a year, and I had watched 100 adults smile and wave him through. And I understood, sitting at that table, that every single one of them thought they were being kind. His coaches, his teachers, his mother most of all. And all of them together had built him a life in which nothing he did had ever once landed on him. And they called it love, and it was going to leave him at 18 with the emotional muscles of a much younger child and a smile that had stopped working on anyone who mattered. The kindest thing, the actually kind thing, the thing none of the smiling adults had the spine to do, was to let one true consequence reach him while he was still young enough to learn from it. I was, I realized, possibly the only adult in his life who respected him enough to tell him no. So I closed the folder and I decided to hold, not against Cody, but in a strange way, for him. I did one more thing before the hearing, and if you are ever in a spot like this, do this thing. I called my union representative. His name was Frank. He had 30 years in. He had seen every version of this movie, and he was calm in the specific way of a man who knows exactly where the walls are. Frank read my file, and he was quiet for a moment. And then he said, "Diane, you don't have a problem. You have a folder, and it's a very good folder." He told me what to bring, how to speak, when to stop talking. He reminded me that I was not the one on trial, no matter how the room felt, and that the record, once it went into the minutes, was permanent, and permanent was on my side. Then he came with me, which is the whole reason you pay union dues for 30 years, and hope you never need to find out why. Brenda, meanwhile, had gotten her wish. She had filed a formal complaint against me, unprofessional conduct and bias against her son, and demanded it be heard at the next board meeting, in public, which was her mistake, though she could not have known it. She wanted a stage. She wanted a room full of her booster friends and a burned-out teacher squirming under the lights. She had spent 8 weeks telling 40 families a story about a vindictive woman and a wronged golden boy. And she believed it, I think, completely. She walked into that meeting certain she was about to win. And in a way, she'd designed the perfect trap. And then, the way certain people do, she had walked into the center of it herself and pulled the door shut behind her. The board meeting was in the school library. Folding chairs, a long table for the 5 board members, a microphone stand for public comment, and a crowd. Brenda had packed it. I recognized boosters, a couple of coaches, some parents looking uncertain about why they'd come. Jordan's mother was there too, near the back, having heard what her daughter had refused to do, and she gave me a small nod that I held on to. Cody was there, in a collared shirt, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else on the planet. And I felt for him, I did, because he had not asked to be the flag his mother was planting on this hill. Brenda went first because the complaint was hers. She had a prepared speech printed out, and she read it in the trembling, righteous voice of a woman absolutely certain she is the hero. It was a good speech, honestly, if you didn't know anything. She spoke about a bright boy with a bright future. She spoke about a scholarship slipping away over an 8-week from graduation technicality. She spoke about a teacher, she gestured at me, who had a pattern, she said, of singling out certain students, and who had refused every reasonable attempt to resolve this quietly. She talked for nearly 10 minutes about a ruined future, and by the end of it, I could feel the room leaning her way, could feel the boosters nodding, and my mouth was dry, and I thought, this is what it felt like in Salem. This is exactly what it felt like. The loudest, angriest person in the room, insisting the truth is whatever she says it is. Then it was my turn, and I did what Frank told me to do, which was to be boring and brief and to let the paper be loud so I didn't have to be. I stood up. I did not raise my voice. I said I understood how much everyone in this room loved these kids, and that I did too, which was the entire reason I was standing here instead of taking the easy road that had been offered to me more than once. I said I was not going to talk about my feelings or Mrs. Coyle's feelings, because feelings were not the question. The question was simple, and I could answer it in about 90 seconds. Did a student submit, as his own work, an essay that was substantially copied from a classmate? And I said, I don't need you to take my word for any of it. I brought the record. I handed each board member a copy of the folder. I did not narrate it dramatically. I simply walked them through it page by page in a flat voice. Here are the two essays, side by side, the matching passages marked. Here is the similarity report the district's own software generated. Not me, the software. Here are the two timestamps, showing which paper was submitted first. And here, I said, is the only part I take no pleasure in showing you. And I meant that, so I said it quietly. Here is a message from the school's own system, sent the night before the essay was due. I did not read Cody's words out loud. I want you to notice that, because it was the most important decision I made all night. I could have read, "Just send me yours. I'll change it up so it's not obvious," into that microphone, and watch the room turn on a teenage boy. And some part of me, the part that had been called bitter in front of 40 families, wanted to. I didn't. I told the board the message was in their packet, on the tab marked 5, and that they could read it themselves, and that I'd ask them to remember he was a kid, and that whatever they decided, I hoped it stayed in that room. Then I sat down. The loudest thing I did all night was decline to be loud. The board read tab 5 in silence. I watched 5 faces change, one after another, in the small, private way faces change when a story someone has been selling you falls apart in your hands. And then the board president, a retired accountant who had said almost nothing all evening, asked the only question that was left. He looked not at me, but at Brenda, and he asked gently, "Mrs. Coyle, is this your son's message?" And Brenda, who had come for a stage, opened her mouth and found she had nothing prepared for the truth, because she had spent 8 weeks so certain of her story that she had never actually looked at the file. She had never asked to see it. She had simply known. That, in the end, was the whole tragedy of her, and of the play we'd all been reading. She had never once looked at the file. There was one more thing in that folder, and the board president found it on his own, on the last tab, and I did not have to say a word about it. It was her group text. 40 parents, my name, the words bitter and vindictive and torpedoing a good kid's future. She had written her own second exhibit and mailed it to 40 houses, and now it sat in the public record of a public meeting in her own words, time-stamped, undeniable. A portrait not of me, but of exactly the kind of pressure the academic integrity policy exists to withstand. I hadn't planned to use it as a weapon. I'd included it to defend myself against the charge of being unprofessional. But a document doesn't care why you brought it. It just says what it says. The board did not deliberate long, and they did not make a show of it, which I was grateful for. The president said, for the record, that the academic integrity policy had been followed correctly, that the grade would stand, and that the complaint against me was dismissed as unfounded. He said one more thing, looking at the whole room, not just at Brenda, that I have never forgotten. He said, "We ask teachers to hold a line, and then we get angry when they actually hold it. Not tonight." That was all. The minutes recorded it, and a record, as Frank had promised me, is permanent, and permanent was on my side. I did not celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate exactly. A boy still had a 0 he'd earned. A mother had been humbled in front of the town she'd tried to turn against me, and none of that felt like winning, because a school full of adults had failed that kid for years, and I was just the one holding the bill when it finally came due. I gathered my folder, I thanked the board, and I drove home. And I slept better than I had in 8 weeks. Not because I'd beaten Brenda, but because I hadn't signed my name to the lie. If you know the play, you know that's the whole thing. That's the only thing. Let me tell you what happened to everyone, because I know you want to know, and because the update is the part I actually keep in a drawer. Cody did not graduate on time. The 0, on top of an already thin year, left him short of the credit he needed, and he had to make it up in summer school. And he did. And he walked in August instead of June, which felt, to a family like the Coyles, like the end of the world, and was, in fact, just a slightly later Tuesday. The scholarship, it turned out, had been more of a maybe than his mother's speech had suggested. Brenda pulled Cody's younger sibling from my future rosters and did not speak to me again, which I bore up under. And Principal Hale, the man who'd smiled and mentioned my contract, took an early retirement at the end of that year. I never learned all the reasons, and it wasn't only me, but I know that a few members of that board had a good long look at how the man had handled things, and that a principal who tells a teacher to make the truth go away is a principal who has told other things to go away, and boards remember. And then, 2 years later, an envelope showed up in my school mailbox, handwritten, with a return address from a community college 2 states over. I did not recognize the handwriting. I opened it at my desk. It was from Cody. It was not long, and it was not polished, and the commas were still in all the wrong places. And I have read it more times than I will admit. He wrote that he was doing well, that he'd found something he was actually good at, something with engines, and that he was making the honor roll for the first time in his life at a school where nobody knew his last name or cared. And then he wrote the part I keep in the drawer. He said that for a long time he'd hated me, and that somewhere in that first hard year away from home, he'd realized I was the only adult in his entire childhood who had ever told him no and meant it, and made it stick. And that at the time it had felt like the meanest thing anyone ever did to him, and that he had come to understand it was one of the kindest. He said, and I am quoting the last line exactly because I have it in front of me, "You were the only one who didn't lie to me. Thank you for the 0." I keep that letter in the top drawer of my desk, under the red pins, and on the hard days, the days when a parent is screaming, or a policy is being ignored, or I wonder why I ever chose this, I take it out and I read it. And then I put it back, and I go teach my next class. Because a grade, like I told you at the start, is only a measurement. It just tells you where you are, so you know how far you have to go. Most kids never find out what the measurement was really for. Cody did. It took him 2 years and 2 states, but he did. So let me leave it with you, since this whole thing began as a question about whether I was the villain. Be honest with yourself. Was I wrong to hold the line 8 weeks before a boy's graduation, when bending it would have cost me nothing, and folding is what almost everyone advised? Or does a 0 he earned, and a no that finally stuck, count as the kindest thing a tired teacher ever did for a kid who'd been failed by kindness his whole life? I know where I land. I'm genuinely curious where you do. Tell me in the comments. And while you're there, tell me your state and your age, and whether you ever had one teacher who wouldn't let you slide, and whether, looking back, you're angry about it or grateful. I already suspect I know. If this one landed with you, a like helps more people find it, and I'd be glad to have you here for the next one.